Hello, everybody. Today is Monday, November 24th. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Canuck News. My opinion on the things that are shaping Canada today. Today we have a pretty interesting topic, and it actually, again, it's a much wider topic that's being addressed. Because it's a much wider diplomatic woe. It's not actually just a G20 Mark Carney meeting with Narendra Modi. It is it is that, but it's also economic moves that Ottawa is trying to pull into from its private sector. For one, it is trying to rebuild this relationship with India that blackface Justin Trudeau completely ruined. By inviting terrorists to meetings, by doing a whole bunch of things, by allowing certain groups to actually function within Canada that one of your major trading partners in Asia consider terrorists. So there's a whole slew of things that actually go into this meeting specifically. And I'm going to try and cover them all in as quickly as I can. But let's get into it. So the first article here is by the Globe and Mail. So Carney and Modi agree to restart stalled Canada-India trade talks. So Prime Minister Mark Carney and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi have agreed to pursue what they are calling the Comprehensive Economic Partnership, restarting trade talks that have been frozen for the past 2 years. They've been frozen because of blackface Justin Trudeau and his genius policies and just way of acting over the course of his decade of ruining the country. The development comes after the two leaders met on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Johannesburg on Sunday. It is the latest evidence of a thaw in relations between the two countries, which broke down following the killing of Canadian Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia in 2023. So this happened. This dude was killed. He is a part of a group that is advocating for the cessation of the Sikh part of, or the Punjab part of India into a independent state, right? And so it's this Sikh independence movement within India. This guy was basically doing what he was doing. He was propagating. I'm sure that they were doing some financing deals with the groups on the ground in India. I have no evidence of what I'm saying right now, but I'm sure that something of those of that sort was actually happening because someone killed the guy. You don't go around killing people like this political activist for no reason. The guy got killed, right? And obviously the RCMP, Canada, they blamed India for murdering people on Canadian soil, Canadian citizens on Canadian soil. But the question now is, why is a Canadian citizen, if they're such a heart-thumping Canadian, trying to push for an independence movement in the place that they ran away from? How Canadian are you then? Or are you just using your Canadian citizenship for a safety net so that you can project whatever the hell else you want to do, right? Anyways, not to get sidetracked. Canada and India have pursued a free trade agreement in fits and starts since 2010. The latest effort began in 2022, but was called off the next year amid the diplomatic row when the guy was killed. So they blame these guys. So the Sunday announcement is part of a broader reorientation of Canadian foreign policy since becoming Prime Minister. Mark Carney has sought to mend economic ties with China and India, two countries with which Ottawa has had major security concerns in recent years. There's a reason for this because both China and India need natural resources en masse. They just need them, right? And Canada can actually supply them to an extremely large degree. Right now, both China and India are receiving more or less the majority of whatever they need from Russia in terms of minerals, in terms of oil and gas, in terms of fertilizers and these types of things. They're getting a lot of it from the Russians. China has actually started massively importing food from Russia, diversifying away from the US. There's a massive railroad that was built from the European part of Russia that goes literally across the Asian part directly into China. And it's cargo rail. It's like 1 million tons of cargo that these trains can haul. So there's a major effort from China to be connected to Russia away from the US. India is a little different because it's farther away. It doesn't have a land border with the Russians. However, the Indians have been absolutely just been making money hand over fist, reselling Russian oil back to Europe because the Europeans are turning a blind eye to it, basically, right? So there's this whole wider geopolitical play that's going on. I actually kind of applaud the attempt of Canada. Not that I'm supporting Mark Carney, but I actually applaud the attempt at trying to amend this because India is a massive country. Its economy is drastically growing all of the time. They're pulling a lot of people out of poverty. They still have a ton of people in poverty. But the way it's going is they're going to continually need more goods, more services, more everything, essentially, right? Anyways, on his way to the G20, Mark Carney stopped in the United Arab Emirates to drum up the money that we talked about, $70 billion to Canada. He said, certainly it's not the case. This is an important point. When we engage a country that we're endorsing everything that country does, Mark Carney said. So, I mean, it's more of this liberal BS where, there's, we need money now, but, if you guys aren't, too conscientious about human rights, we're not going to trade with you. No, you're not. Shut up. Get out of here. You think the UAE gives a flying about human rights? They don't give a shit. They don't care. What are you talking about? Do you think the Qataris care about human rights? Do you think India cares about they don't. No one cares. That's a Western. That's a modern Western philosophy. Is tying trade to human rights, and we need to be more ethical globally. I am 100% agreeing for that. But if you're trying to position yourself in a way to be competitive in the global marketplace when there are other options. You think the Indians won't, like, if Canada's like, yeah, we're not going to trade with you because you abuse human rights. The Indians, they're just going to turn around, they're like, go fuck yourself. We're going to go talk to the Russians. And they're just going to buy everything from Russia. They don't care. No one cares. It's sad, but no one cares. You know what I mean? So this is just a whole bunch of baloney, what he's talking about here. Anyways, he says the policy shift comes in response to the sharp protectionist turn from, so they blame Trump for Canada's politicians finally getting off of their ass to actually do something about the way the economy functions, right? And so, blame Donald Trump for us getting off our ass, for us stopping this lullification, pacification of Canada as a nation. It says Ottawa has pledged to double down non-U.S. exports to $600 billion from $300 billion over the next decade. It has committed billions to improve trade and infrastructure. Good. So this is key right here. We're looking at $70 billion. They want to increase $70 billion with the Indians. So on the weekend, India and Canada struck a trilateral technology innovation partnership with Australia as the third member aimed at boosting cooperation in sectors like nuclear energy and artificial intelligence. Nuclear energy is something that we're actually good at. Good. We should be, because you know who else is good at nuclear energy as well? The Russians. Exactly. And I've said this a million times. Canada and Russia are basically have the same economy. More or less, the competitive advantage is the same, and we need to be going head to head with the Russians wherever we can competitively. Canada is the Western version of Russia, and we need to monopolize on this as much as we can, and we're not. And so it kind of it talks about the breakdown of the Canadian services here and all of that. But what I wanted to show you here was what I find hilarious. So the bilateral relations. So this is a Government of Canada website, right? So bilateral relations. Canada and India share over 75 years of diplomatic relations and deep people ties, obviously because we import all of their people. Formally designated as a strategic partnership in 2018, structured around ministerial dialogues on foreign policy, trade, investment, finance, and energy. We collaborate on counterterrorism, security, agriculture, and education, science, technology. So here we go. India is Canada's largest source country for most immigration categories, including almost 400,000 study permit holders within Indian citizenship in Canada in 2024. So this is one reason why Canada actually has to have really good relationship, diplomatic, trade, and all of that with India, is because we actually have a bunch of Indians living in Canada, right, that are calling Canada home. They're so much so calling Canada home that they're actually trying to interfere in actual Indian politics by killing, by the Indians actually sending in assassins to kill people from time to time. But yeah, we have a bunch of Indians living in Canada, and this is why we actually need to have really good relationship. We need to have a really good relationship with them. But just to see what it says, in India, Canada is represented, so we have a bunch of high councils around India. High consulates, sorry. Right, so we're trying to deepen, that's all it says we're just trying to deepen the relationship there. But just to kind of get into here, so this is also very interesting. So this is an Asia Pacific article publication where it says, complementing these budgetary measures, Canada is also fast-tracking strategic mining projects through the Major Projects Office. And so that goes through what we're talking about here, but basically tungsten, molybdenum, the nickel, we have graphite. And so those are the main things that we're pushing through the major projects office. So in India, the government removed import duties on about 40 critical minerals in the 2024 and 2025 budgets to expand much needed mineral imports. To strengthen domestic capacity, it also launched the National Critical Mineral Mission to support all stages of the value chain, from exploration, mining, recycling, whatever. Yeah, exactly. So what they need. So India has been trying to work at developing its own EV sector quite a bit, right? To counter China, because they're regional competitors. They also share a border, and they both have insane amount of people living in each other, respectively living in the countries. So the list of 30 critical minerals are including lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, and rare earth elements. So this is all you need to build a lithium ion battery, right? Marking a major step in defining India's mineral priorities and guiding investment exploration. So they're not telling you that it's for EV here, but these are all the main minerals that you need for EV, right? So take that in. So we're going to be exporting all of this stuff to India so that we can bolster their EV industry instead of us trying to make it ourselves. Yay for us. But this is where it gets even more interesting, and I want to call us out for being lazy. So it says top 5 merchandise product exports to India: vegetables, mineral fuels and oils, wood pulp, fertilizers, paper, and paper board. We're basically selling them raw materials. Just so you guys know, we're basically selling India raw materials. What are we getting in return? We're a G7 country. We're supposed to be one of the most civilizationally developed nations in the world. We're selling them raw materials. Top 5 merchandise product imports from India that we're importing into Canada: pharmaceutical products, machinery, electronics, precious stone metals, iron and steel products. Why are we importing iron and steel products from India? We don't have our own steel, really. Hamilton, Ontario is not building enough, pumping out enough steel. So we do have a bit of a trade surplus with them, but it's still like, come on, guys, come on. Canada needs to be developing machinery, like finished goods that it's exporting to countries like India for them to use our stuff, right? So commercial priorities, so clean tech, energy, digital, whatever. But what I wanted to actually touch on, what was key there was the fertilizers that they mentioned, right? A bit earlier, right? So there's in this fertilizer, so it's labeling it as 400 million, right? But this 400 million figure actually doesn't include potash, right? Canada's main export, which Canada is actually India's main supplier of potash. Right? Russia's number 2, believe that. And I was actually trying to find these official statistics. However, I couldn't actually enter the links adequately. Like the stats didn't show up. But according to what ChatGPT has pulled out, the actual value of exports of potash and other fertilizers into India is around, let's say, 1.4 billion. That's a serious amount of stuff that we're exporting to India. Okay? That's a lot. Should we increase it? Absolutely, because their population is increasing. And this is great, but what's key here that I wanted to touch on, and so just so you guys know, I found this article from Reuters as well. This was from July of this year. So Russian fertilizer producers target 25% global market share by 2030, lobby group says. So the Russians are actually making this big push into grabbing as much market share as they can. And this is probably going to come from China and India, maybe Brazil. Why? Because they're in BRICS. They have like a free trade agreement. Of course, they're going to sell into the trading bloc that they created. You know what I mean? So this is where we're going head to head. This is why I say all the time that Canada is the Western version of Russia. We don't have the industrial capabilities of Russia, which I think that we should have, essentially. I think we should be a massive manufacturing hub, and we should be using our natural resources to the utmost degree to literally just pump ourselves up to create as much value add as we can in all sectors as possible, right? So this is who we're going against. We're going head to head with the Russians for this market share, right? And a large portion of that is going to be in India. Why? Because up until recently, the Europeans were buying all of their stuff from Russia. Now they're not, because they put this fertilizer ban on the Russians. So they're trying to diversify. They might be getting potash from Canada. I'm not actually quite sure on that, to be honest. But the Russians they're looking for new markets. The new markets that they're going to go to, they're going to be mainly in Asia, right? And the reason why I wanted to touch on this specifically right now was because, and this story ties into obviously these pipelines that need to be built to the west. So we can see the great Premier Danielle Smith calling out BC Premier Eby on not being collaborative, on increasing Canada's competitiveness in the global market and diversifying away from the US. But this is key. Look at this, guys. Look at this wider picture, right? At the same time that Mark Carney is going to India, he was in Johannesburg, but he met with the the Prime Minister of India, Modi, having these collaboration talks with him about trade and all of that. Ottawa is putting pressure on Nutrien, one of the largest Canadian potash producers and exporters, on, hey guys, why are you building an export terminal in the U.S.? Why are you going to Washington State? Why aren't you doing it in BC? Why? Because Ebi's a loser. That's why. They have to go to Washington State because Ebi is not allowing, for ecological reasons, for this to happen in BC. For us to be able to export things en masse into the Asian markets, and this is the only reason why they're going to Washington State is so that they can export into Asian markets. And I think it even says it here. So it says the potash producer began looking at U.S. Canadian locations. This new terminal in the Pacific Northwest a year ago. On Wednesday, the company announced it had chosen a port in Longview, Washington. You only go to the West Coast to sell to Asian markets, right? And so this is key. So this is all happening at the same time. So this is a Saskatchewan-based fertilizer, right? So it's all, there's always a wider story, right? And we just consistently get these tidbits of things, of information from the news outlets, but you always have to look at it from a wider angle, and this is exactly it. So exactly right here. So it says potash is Canada's 5th largest export. Should Nutrien proceed with its plan, by 2031, it will be shipping as much Canadian mined potash to fast-growing markets in Asia through U.S. ports as through Canadian ports. So instead of us going exclusively through our own ports, we're also going to be exporting through U.S. ports to the same degree. That makes no fucking sense. That makes no sense. And so this is key, and this is why we're talking to Modi right now. This is why the pressure is being put on this company to not go to the U.S. Not even so much because of the spat with Trump. It doesn't make fucking sense. It doesn't make sense, guys. If we're going to expand anything, we should expand our own terminals for exporting on the coasts. This is what I mean by we need a wider national strategy for our mineral goods and for our export strategy, everything top down. We need an actual national strategy that we don't have, right? And when you don't have one, you have large companies looking to diversify their exports out of the home state into a foreign state, probably because there's less hurdles to go through. They don't care. The U.S. doesn't care. But one key thing that's really that spat that exists here between Ottawa and New Delhi is around, it was basically this guy that the guy that got killed, right? So this is and I found this was in the CBC. They kind of delved into it a little deeper, right? So the Carney government continues to face questions about why it's trying to improve relations with India after the RCMP last year publicly accused agents of India's government of involvement in homicides, extortion, and threats on Canadian soil. India has denied the accusations. Why are we doing it? Why? Because India has the largest population on Earth. The population of Canada is like a city in India. We want to diversify. They're one of the fastest growing economies as well. And they have the largest population in the world. You want to this is where you go to diversify, right? Why isn't the RCMP doing a better job looking at what kind of potential foreign terrorist cells are actually in the country, right? Why aren't we doing that? And so the funny thing here is there's actually a number of these Khalistan groups that are officially named terrorist organizations by Canada, by the US, obviously by India. India considers them all. Now, being an activist doesn't make you a terrorist. Obviously, I'm not accusing them of being terrorists, but this dude got killed, right? This guy got murdered. So what's the fine line? What is the level of scrutiny that our immigration services do when bringing in people who might have affiliation to actual terrorist groups? I mean, this guy, you either don't want to harm Canada, like Canadian citizens, right? But he wanted to harm a potential or a serious Canadian trade partner, which inadvertently actually does harm Canada, right? And then you have blackface Justin Trudeau bringing people like that with him on a on a diplomatic trip to India. That was such a debacle, right? What an idiot. I wasn't actually an idiot. I can't believe that he was prime minister for that long. And anyways, so this is key. So who's in the wrong? What's the fine line? Where do we really draw the line with these types of stories, right? Because it's not, we can't just be, hey, you killed a Canadian citizen. Yeah, but this guy is funding a separatist movement in India from Canada. So it's like, buddy, why has he not been approached by the RCMP and been like, buddy, you can't do this. Like, this is a major trade partner. Like, we make billions from them. Like, screw off, stop, and then put him in jail if he does it again. It's very simple. It's very simple. But the problem is Canada doesn't actually have a hardline approach with immigration. It doesn't have a hardline approach with anything, really, because the police tell you to leave your keys on the front porch so that robbers don't actually enter your house. Buddy, robber enters my house, guy's not going to see the light of day. You know what I mean? But we clearly have this same situation, this same line of thinking with our foreign policy, because this is what we have, right? And so it seems like Mark Carney's trying to change things. I think he's forced into acting like this in this way, to be honest. I think he's just forced into it because of the tariffs that Donald Trump brought onto us. And to be honest, I think Donald Trump actually forced him to not diversify, but to open up, to boost the production, exploitation of natural minerals, because the U.S. needs them as well, right? And there's a big push happening for not possession, but let's say influence over the Arctic Ocean. It's a whole wider thing going on. And they're always trying to pick at India. The U.S. is always trying to pick at India as a main supplier, a main partner in Asia, obviously to counter China, right? But India is in BRICS. So India is this like double agent. And they play a really, really good realpolitik. The Indians, they don't give a shit. They don't care. They do what's good for India. They'll trade with anybody. They don't care. They literally don't care. The Europeans called them out for buying Russian oil and reselling it to Europe. And India was like, the foreign minister, forgot his name, very eloquent man. He was like, we don't care. He's like, you're buying it. Why? So he's like, stop buying it. Why are you buying it from us then? He's like, we're going to do what's good for India. I'm paraphrasing completely, but this was an actual interview that happened. They don't care. This is the type of thinking that Canada needs to have. We need to have a we don't care policy. We're going to do what's good for Canada. Always. Exclusively. This is all I have for us today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Canuck News. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like Captain say, kick your ass all hockey season, ay. Now teach me riding horses.